It's Sandy Anastasi here, and I'm sorry to interrupt your Sunday evening, but I'm truly glad that so many of you could make the webinar here with me this evening. It's a pleasure to be with you as always. The webinar I'm going to be offering tonight is an overview of the Anastasi system of psychic development, Level 1. Now, this webinar is different from the one that I presented a few weeks back, which was an overview of the entire Anastasi system of psychic development. That was kind of just to get your feet wet and know what it is that I'm teaching out there. Tonight's webinar is going to go into a great deal more depth. It is going to follow to a great degree my book on psychic development Level 1. It's going to give you more of a hands-on approach, so that if you do have the book or the CDs or the MP3s or the Blu-rays on Psychic Development 1, you're going to be able to have a much clearer idea of how to work with that material. And we're actually going to do some of the exercises and things that I talk about in my book and on those materials. Psychic Development 1 is so very, very important. It is, if we look at the second slide here, the very, very first place that everyone should be moving through in their psychic development. This, folks, is where it all starts. All the way back in 1979, when I first began teaching psychic development to students, this is the place that I realized I had to start in order for the average everyday person to be able to attain the skills and to, I think of it as remembering, because we all have these natural talents and abilities psychically. We just don't know we've got them until we go through these exercises that gradually remind us of how to access and use them. And I realized in teaching my students randomly back then different techniques that there was a system that could be employed that was virtually foolproof, and that could develop everyone's psychic abilities. And in Psychic Development Level 1, the fundamentals is where it all starts. So that's what we're going to be doing this evening. Some of you, I was recognizing some names as I was waiting for the webinar to start. Some of you are going to be with me this coming weekend in Tampa, Florida. And I'm going to really be looking forward to meeting you in person then. I do teach these seminars in person. I teach them several times a year, and you'll have to look for usually a January or a July start for Psychic Development Level 1 if you want to study it with me. There are other teachers throughout the world who are also teaching psychic development, the entire series, including Level 1, and you'll be able to actually see their names and where they're located on my website. And of course, if you're in a remote area and you cannot get to a live person, you're always going to be able to study my psychic development series via a webinar like this one, which it does require a lot of self-work, work on your own. You will also be able to do it via the Blu-rays, which are great videos. They actually are a video of the exact class. And so when you're looking at the video, it's really like you're in the class with the students that are there. And also there are CDs and MP3s of the classes if you're someone who learns well from audio. I'm trying to make this series as approachable, as affordable, and as available to every one of you throughout the world as I can, because I believe that we are already living in a psychic world. By the time we're into the next 10 years, everyone is going to be utilizing their psychic abilities. This is not just coming, this is here, and the average person is already beginning to use these skills in their daily life. And that's what we're going to talk about in tonight's webinar. Not just what can these skills do for you, but what you should expect as you begin to uncover them. And again, Level 1, the fundamentals, is the place to start. And yes, I can see hands going up. If you want to ask a question, please raise your hand. I will be breaking for questions at various times throughout the webinar. And Trish or Lisa will be calling on you so that you'll be able to ask those questions about the subjects that I'm talking about. I did see one or two questions already asked in the chat, and some of those questions I'm not going to be able to answer because if they are not pertinent to the material that I'm covering, they really aren't going to be able to be answered in this particular webinar. However, you can write them to me on Facebook. I am available to you on Facebook. You can write them on my website. The website email is lisasainc@aol.com. I do see those emails. So if you ask a question, you're going to get an answer. We're very good about that. So if you don't get it here tonight, ask. You will get your questions answered. I promise. Now, the next slide is you live in a psychic world. This really shows you exactly what is going on in the world around you. Now, some of these terms I'm using are new to some of you who are brand new to the psychic field. To others, they're old hat because you've been with us for a while. Folks, I want you to know that I have had people who are professional psychics come to my classes, and some of them will start with mediumship, or they'll start with the Psychic Development 3 because they want to learn about how to use a pendulum. But what ends up happening is that they always go back and start taking Psychic Development 1, even if they missed it the first time around, because they realize that that foundation is absolutely necessary for being able to grow and make really the best use of your psychic abilities. And so let's get back to this slide. You live in a psychic world. Here is where it all starts. If you look at this slide, imagine that that figure standing in the middle is you. Now, right around the body of that person, you see a little white glow. That's called your etheric aura. And you know, that glow can actually be seen under a microscope as little particles and bits of flesh and particles of bacteria and so forth that are actually floating above your skin. It's actually visible under a microscope, that first layer of the aura that's called the etheric aura. The second layer of the aura I call the astral aura, and that is the part of the aura where you get to see colors when you develop your clairvoyance. Now, in Psychic Development Level 1, I do not teach you how to see the auras. I'm giving you the foundation tools in Psychic Development Level 1, so that in Psychic Development Level 2, when I actually teach you to see the aura and to feel the aura, you have no trouble doing it. So this is why people come back over and over again to taking Psychic Development Level 1. It gives you that absolute perfect foundation to be able to do those more in-depth skills that you learn in the later courses in the series. Now, you'll notice that right outside the astral aura, there is an egg shape that surrounds the entire body. Now, you don't quite see it on this figure, but there is actually something we call the auric wall, A-U-R-I-C, wall, and it operates very much like a cell in your physical body would. It selectively allows information in and out that separates you from the world around you. So anything which is within that egg shape becomes very personal. That's selective information that you have psychically allowed in. That's, for example, you are trying to bring your husband to your mother-in-law, and you immediately know that he doesn't want to go because something very strong bursts in your mind that says, I don't want to go to your mother's. And even though he hasn't said it, you have heard it. Well, that means that your cell wall, your auric wall, has opened and let that bit of information in. And of course, the people that we're closest to, like our husbands or our wives, are the ones that we have the most in common with. In order for information to communicate through that auric wall, you need to have something in common with that person. So obviously our family members are the ones that we are most psychic with. But frankly, as you develop your skills as a psychic, you are going to be able to communicate through that wall by selectively allowing in information that you have programmed yourself that you want to receive. It's just that simple. Now, when you look at the area outside of that cell wall, now you're looking at what I call the worldwide psychic web. And I see that web almost as a spider web, literally a web or a network where you can actually see, if you see clairvoyantly, these little rays of light that trace themselves along that web between one person and another. Or if I'm away from home and I want to use remote viewing to see my home, like in this picture that's illustrated, I'll be able to clairvoyantly literally see the brainwave following along that psychic web and remote viewing my home. So we are able, by using that psychic web, to connect with other people through our other psychic skills. And I wanted you to immediately see why I constantly say you live in a psychic world. The psychic world is already here. We have always lived in that psychic world. We are now becoming consciously aware that we live in that psychic world, and we are becoming consciously able, many of us, to be able to activate the aspects within ourselves which can interact with that psychic world. Now just think, the next time you're missing a quart of milk for dinner, you can send a message through the worldwide psychic web to your husband, wherever he is, or your wife, wherever she is, and say, honey, bring home that quart of milk. And they will hear you if you have worked to open and make that connection between the two of you strong. Sometimes they won't do it consciously, but they'll still do it. It's pretty amazing. Try it. You're going to be amazed. Now that you are aware of how it works, you're going to be amazed that you can already get results with that. Okay? Now, our next slide shows the various types of psychic abilities that you can develop. This slide is so important, folks. We all know that we have 5 physical senses. We can see, we can taste, we can hear, we can touch, we can smell. Well, when we feel something, the psychic equivalent to that psychic sense is called empathy. And I want to start with empathy. I know that's not at the top of my list here, but I want to start with empathy because, you know, empathy is probably the skill that almost everyone on this webinar who's in attendance has already got most strongly developed and doesn't know it. If you are the person who immediately feels like you want to cry when there's somebody sitting next to you who's obviously really, really hurting and feeling pain, and you feel like you want to reach out to them to help them, guess what? Your empathy is being activated. Empathy has many different aspects. You can be a projective empath, which means you're somebody who projects your feelings very strongly. That's the person who can make someone else cry easily. Or that's the person who can command an audience. That's a projective empath. Or you can be the receptive empath. And sometimes it's very difficult for people who are receptive empaths because those are the people who always know when somebody else needs something, and before they even know they're doing it, they're putting that cup of coffee in their hands, or they're getting those slippers. And those people are scratching their heads and saying, now why does somebody never do those things for me? And that's because if you have decided you're only going to be receptive, you're not going to project your own needs and wants. Other people can't respond to them. So projective empaths get a lot of service and receptive empaths don't. They do the service. So think about which one of those you are, okay? Now in my classes, you learn how to identify both of those abilities. And you also, this is big folks, you also learn, in addition to how to identify them, you learn how to activate them, how to control them, how to consciously use them. So if you happen to be a receptive empath, you know you already have the gift of empathy. Well, you can learn how to be the projective empath. You can learn to balance that out. And I can't begin to tell you how many of my students come back to me after they take psychic development levels 1 and 2, both offered in weekend classes with me, and they say, oh my God, Sandy, my whole world has changed. I don't have this passive-aggressive issue going on in my life anymore because I don't need that emotion. I'm able to communicate my needs better. It's absolutely amazing what kind of help these classes give to people that goes far beyond just developing your psychic abilities. Because remember, you're already psychic. So what I'm doing is teaching you what you're already doing. And I'm teaching you how to develop what you want to develop and how to expand into more of what you want to develop and how to minimize the things that don't work for you. So this is a turn it on and turn it up, or turn it down or turn it off opportunity. Once you learn what you've got, you can do so much with it. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Empathy also is interesting because when a psychic who, for example, works with the police would hold a T-shirt or an object that belongs to somebody who was murdered or abducted, or they're trying to get information on for some reason, the skill that's actually being used there is a form of empathy. And it's a combination of empathy and clairsentience. Now, clairsentience, that's two down on the list. Clairsentience is when you actually feel vibration, okay? You sense it through your skin, through your feelings. So when I employ empathy and clairsentience, now I have the ability to read the vibrations on an object. It's the combination, okay? And we actually have a name for that skill as well. We teach that in Psychic Development Level 3 as its own area. And many, many people find that they're extremely adept at being able to read the vibrations on an object. So let's pop up to the top of the list and talk about telepathy for a moment. This is a skill that all of us already possess, but very few people have it finely honed. And we actually, in my classes, do telepathy exercises, which actually, again, because empathy is so prevalent among people, the empathy also in these exercises does come into considerable play. It's interesting, if you're communicating mind to mind over distance and you don't see the person and you're not talking to the person and you haven't spoken with them or seen them within the last hour or so, then you can be pretty sure you're working with telepathy alone. But if you've made any connection with that person earlier in the day, especially within the previous hour, you can be pretty sure that empathy is coming into play, because people have such a strong ability for empathy that if you have line of sight, if you've spoken with the person recently, your empathy will be involved in connecting and reading information from them. But telepathy technically is mind to mind. It's purely mental communication. And of course, we cross that line and utilize our empathy so often, so we combine the two skills. But when we are talking strictly about telepathy, it simply is mind to mind. And the reason you don't see it as frequently as you would is because people tend to be such strong empaths that they will rely on their empathy and not develop the telepathy as well. However, I have had many students in my classes who are natural born and always have been. And one of the things that I have noted with the generation of children that is presently being born and growing up right now, that these children are not empathic, telepathic, okay, where it's mind to mind. Now, how do I know telepathy is at work? For example, I may be thinking of a girlfriend and she calls me at the same moment I'm thinking of her. Now, if I haven't seen her for a couple of weeks or even thought of her for a couple of weeks and bam, there she is, that's telepathy. So, and we've all had that experience. So we know that all of us are already telepathic. And what I do with my students, and you'll see this in my books, and you'll get copies of my little exercise in any CD or MP3 that you download. It's offered along with the Blu-ray as a handout. I actually take my students through a psychic development aptitude exercise that helps them to develop their telepathic skills. And although we can use it, and we do use it as a baseline to see where you're at when you start the classes so that you can periodically take that and measure your growth, I can also tell you that the more often you do that telepathy exercise, the better you are going to become at working with telepathy. And I think this is so very, very important that on my website I actually have the cards available as a free download, and I have the aptitude test available as a free download. So anybody can go straight from this webinar over to my website and print those things out and have some fun with your family later tonight. Okay? Remembering though that if you've connected with that person over the, while you're actually working with the test, it's going to be a combination of telepathy and empathy, because obviously you're seeing them, they're in the same room with you, and as long as that consideration is there, you will partially be using empathy. We can't separate the two abilities. However, in doing that aptitude exercise, you're still going to be developing both of them. Not to mention that you will also be developing precognition by doing that exercise. Okay, so, and I don't even have precognition listed here because precognition is not one of our 5 physical senses. Precognition is simply a psychic sense that develops as we develop our abilities psychically. So we have empathy, it's a physical sense. We have seeing, which connects with clairvoyance. We have clairsentience, which connects with your ability to touch something and feel the vibration on it. So our physical touch equates to clairsentience. We have clairalience. That psychic sense equates to the sense of smell. And I want to talk about that for a moment because, clairalience is almost always one of the first psychic senses to develop. And, oh boy, it's not always the nicest one. I have my students come back to me and say, oh, Sandy, I knew that I was connecting with my guide in my meditation the other day because I smelled this wonderful sense of flowers. And I can only tell you that I recall the first time my clairalience kicked in, it was a warning. I had gone into a store around Christmas time to buy some trains, and I got this smell of rotting meat. And it was so bad that I had to leave the store. I said to my husband, did you smell that? He said, smell what? Nobody else was smelling it. And what's interesting is I do not have a physical sense of smell, but boy, that psychic sense, when it kicks in, it's strong. These days, the only time my sense of smell kicks in is when my food that I'm cooking is done. I like it better that way. So your clairalience can give you warnings. It can give you messages about things. You'll know when somebody is there. For example, if you have a deceased loved one who's coming around you, you might smell their perfume. If some friend of yours is thinking about you, you might get a whiff of their perfume. So many, many people have clairalience awakening, and that's one of those very subtle senses. Unless you say to the companion you're with, do you smell roses? And they say, well, no, I don't, and there are no rose bushes in sight. Well, guess what? Then that's probably your psychic sense of smell that's communicating to you. One of the things that is very important as you're learning psychic development is to keep a do-good book. And in your do-good book, you record all of these experiences. When you pick up the phone and that girlfriend that you were thinking about is on it, there's your telepathy. Record that. That was a telepathic do-good. When you're smelling roses and you realize that you happen to be at a place in town that your mom, who has passed, really, really liked, and nobody else is smelling those roses, but that was her favorite flower. Well, that's a do-good. Write it down. That's clairalience, communicating, helping, being your tool to communicate with someone on the other side in that case. When clairsentience, when you pick up an object that you're going to buy in a store and you get this feeling of yuck and you put it down, you just are being told through the vibration on the object, that thing isn't a good thing to buy. Maybe it's a CD player you're going to buy, and that one's going to break. That's not a good CD player. Don't get it. Now, even if it's the best make in the world, your clairsentience has just told you this isn't good for you. Don't get that one. So write all those things down on a daily basis because we're already all experiencing these things. And if you are writing them down, you're going to strengthen them. You're going to get a lot more of them. And the beauty of that is that as you're getting more and more and more of all of these things, you're going to increase everything that you're getting. The more you write, the more you are giving yourself recognition for these experiences, the more you are giving your psychic skills recognition, and the more of them you're going to get. It's absolutely amazing how quickly that can develop. Now, also, I want to mention, don't write down flights of fancy. One of the things that is very important in my classes, and any of my students will tell you this, I keep my feet firmly on the ground. No flights of fancy. If you think you are picking something up, get proof, then write it down. Okay? Get proof. And that proof is validation for you that you really did have that psychic experience, that intuition. And it also will make sure that you develop your skills properly, completely, and without jumping to conclusions that are not valid. A psychic who makes predictions, anybody can talk about things that are fantasies, okay? A psychic who makes predictions that has her feet or his feet firmly on the ground and looks for validation, now that's the psychic that is going to be able to be very good at what they do and is also going to be able to be trusted by all the people who come to them. And I talk about people who are practicing psychics. Yes, yes, yes. I have trained, taught hundreds of professional psychics. However, I don't teach primarily to teach people how to be professional psychics. I teach in order to teach people like you how to use their God-given abilities to be able to center themselves and become the whole complete person, interacting with the world around them in the way that God intended us to. So let me direct your attention to this beautiful photograph of that woman who is standing on the bridge, because that's what your psychic senses are. They are a bridge between this world that we live in, which is physical, and if it is only treated as physical, it is pale, colors are not sharp, hearing is dull, it simply is a boring place to be, it is a world in shadow. As your psychic senses open and develop, the world takes on color like it's never had before, a vibrancy. You experience joy that is higher than you've ever experienced. You feel things with intensity far beyond what the average person has ever felt unless they've developed their psychic abilities. Your sense of smell becomes richer with more depth. Clairaudience, which is not on this slide, we need to add that, but that clairaudience allows you to hear sounds so that it's as if you're hearing a whole orchestra instead of one instrument. It's absolutely amazing how much more there is to the world around us, and you cannot see it, perceive it, hear it, feel it, smell it, until you develop your psychic skills so that you have the ability to reach further and see more and feel more, because your skills, your psychic skills, are adding to all of these physical senses that we have been born with. So it's really interesting. As you develop yourself psychically, every single one of your 5 physical senses develops an overlay. And that overlay gives you more and more and more in terms of your insight into the world around you. Isn't that neat? So, Trish, this is a good time to ask a question. Is there a hand up relative to the things I'm talking about? Do you have a question at this point, anyone?
If you have a question, please raise your hand or type it in.
Okay, it seems like nobody's got a question yet. Trish, I'm going to ask you to just keep an eye out for hands and feel free to interrupt me along the way if you see one go up. Okay? Okay, can we have the next slide? We're looking here at how your psychic abilities actually work. And this is kind of technical. I'm going to move through it a little faster than I would actually move through it in a class. Again, we're looking at the physical person right here in the middle, and remembering that this person, being you, is in the middle of this worldwide psychic web, and the information is going to come to them through the psychic web. It will hit their auric shell, and through a process of selection similar to osmosis, like what a cell wall in your body would use, your body either, or your being, either allows the information through into your aura or it holds it out. Now, this particular diagram is what happens to that information after it comes into your aura. Well, the first place it hits, if you look all the way down at number 1, which is on the lower left, that psychic input comes from the outer world, contacts your aura, comes into your auric space. It enters this astral order. This level 2, or number 2, that psychic information enters the astral aura, the aura's field, and the first thing it does is it contacts the skin and the physical body. What's interesting is that this means that your actual quickest psychic sense is going to be clairsentience. The thing that psychic information touches first is your physical skin. So if you've ever had the hair stand up on your arms, or you just had, you don't even know why it is, you just automatically respond and know you've got to take a left instead of a right, and you don't even know why you did it afterwards. It wasn't even so much an inspiration, it was just a feeling like guidance. That clairsentience is the very first thing, and there's no mind involved here, there's no emotion involved, there's no inspiration involved, there's no voices involved, no clairaudience. There is simply a, I feel it and I move, or I feel it and I react to it, okay? And that is going to be it's hardest to get a handle on, because so many times you don't even know you're receiving psychic information that way, and yet that's going to be the first way that you get psychic information. Now, once it gets absorbed into the physical body, look over here at number 3. The next place it's going to go is to your emotions. I normally put a little heart there when I'm drawing this on the blackboard, because it feels like it's entering your heart in the middle of your chest. You're feeling this information emotionally. And so the second place that people are quick in the uptick relative to their psychic abilities is in their emotions, and that is why empathy is so prevalent, because the energy of empathy, the psychic ability of empathy, is the ability that most of us respond to most readily and most quickly. That's why it's so prevalent. Now, empathy it can be good or it can be bad. If my empathy is untrained and I'm a very strong empath, well, that means that if you get mad at me, I really get mad back at you and I just blow you away because I'm feeling your energy so quickly. If, on the other hand, my knowledge of empathy is developed and my ability to handle it and control it is developed, well, then I feel your need and I disassociate and I say, I can feel that you're angry, can we talk? You see that there's a big difference there, okay? So empathy is one of those things everybody really needs to get a handle on in order for us to have better relationships with each other. Empathy is great, though. Once you have learned it, you'll know, for example, that feeling that you get, that little pain you get in the back of the head when you go into somebody's house that you don't like, well, that is the clairsentience. That's the contact with your physical body first. But the feeling emotionally, that just is, I don't want to go. And you don't know why, you just, I don't want to go. I don't want to. That's empathy. And that is the next thing that comes up very strongly. Okay, so these are two real quick ways that we can get information psychically when we're paying attention to it. 4 is the third way, actually. The information now is received mentally. And again, most people aren't paying attention to their telepathic knowledge, but a lot of people get things telepathically, i.e. mentally. For example, you don't know why you brought that extra check with you, but you brought it and sure enough you needed to write it out, okay? That's you're receiving telepathically from the person that you're supposed to be writing that check to. They're thinking to themselves, I wonder if that person's going to have a check for me. So you brought the extra check. Okay, that is a telepathic connection. And that's a little harder to get because it is the third place that the energy will reach. But nevertheless, we strongly get that. And 5, information is consciously or unconsciously acted on. Folks, most of us are already working with all of these skills, not just physically, but psychically. We're just not consciously doing it. So because it's not conscious, we do not realize that we have the skills. So isn't it lovely to be able to utilize this knowledge to develop our skills more consciously? Now, Trish, I see we have a question. Can we open that hand and let that person ask for me?
Ray, you have been unmuted. Ray, are you there? Okay, I'm going to mute her, and then I'm going to... Sue, you have been unmuted.
Hello?
Sue?
Hi, Sue.
Yes, hi. I wanted to ask if you could get stuck number 3 if you're in a grieving situation.
Okay, I'm having a hard time hearing you. Trish, can you mute your own mic?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's try it again. Sue,
Yes.
what's your question?
I wanted to know if you can get stuck at number 3 if you are grieving, in a grieving situation.
Oh, you certainly can. You really can. As a matter of fact, something happens when, imagine just for a moment, everyone who's listening to this webinar, I hate to do this to people, but just for a moment, think a thought that makes you feel bad. Think something that happened in your life that you really got upset about, that you didn't feel bad. Now, now that you've thought that thought, feel what's happening in your physical body. Do you feel that sense of that contraction that you've got going on? Okay. Now, think a thought that makes you feel really good. Think about a time when you had somebody loving you and hugging you, and it just felt so good. And now, did you feel that sense of expansion and openness that just happened? Okay. Who we are as we move through life follows our emotional patterning. At this point in mankind's development, it follows our emotional patterning so strongly. And Sue, I'm going to ask you to mute your mic just for this moment. We can unmute it again because we're getting feedback because of the way the mic is set up. Okay, thank you. So what happens, you see, as we're moving through life emotionally, our way of relating, if we're happy and up, we're open and we are very connected to the world around us, and we're receiving information left and right, and we're moving in a path that's healthy and that's growth-oriented for us. But when we're emotionally contracted, when we're feeling bad about something, when we're hanging on to an old grudge or an old anger, or a loss of somebody who passed that we cared so much about, or a relationship that broke up, when we're in that negative space, we're in contraction. And when we contract, we shut our psychic senses down. I have so many people who say to me, Sandy, you know, I lost my husband, or I lost somebody who's my best friend, and I just wonder why everybody else can get messages and feel like they're getting information from them, and I never do. And my answer is, how can they communicate with you if you are so shut down that you will not listen? If you have that contraction going on, you have all of your psychic senses shut. Because when you shut down your empathy, it is so strong that your telepathy follows, your clairsentience follows, your clairalience follows, and you begin to move through life like an automaton. The world goes gray. It goes, you all know this, you've all experienced it, it goes colorless. Guess what? People don't even want to be around you because you begin to suck the color out of their lives too. And as soon as you begin to open back up, when you begin to surround yourself with happy people, when you begin to think about the person you lost, not with the urgency and the hurt of the loss, but you begin to think about that person you lost in terms of, oh, how wonderful it was to hug them. Boy, we might not have had enough years, but oh, we had such glorious years. When you think of the positive, when you think of the happy, your whole aura expands. And now you've reversed that whole pattern, and your communication psychically on every level opens back up again. And guess what? It's not just the person you are missing that can now communicate with you. It's all of the other people around you that you have shut out of your life who you can now pick up on. And life is now filled with joy again. It becomes filled with color. It gets those wonderful scents and the feelings and expansion. Okay, now, unmute her mic again, please, and let me see, Sue, if I've answered your question.
Sue, can you hear us?
Yes, you did. That's kind of, I was stuck on empathy, I believe, and you just kind of explained around, so I do get that, absolutely.
Great. And Sue, I want to say thank you so much for asking that particular question, because I can't begin to tell you how many hundreds and hundreds of times over the years I have answered that same question for students and for clients. Okay, and yes, folks, I do still do readings. Okay, a lot of people say, oh, Sandy, do you do readings? Oh, absolutely. I'll never stop reading. I love reading. So yes, I still do readings, and that's one of the most common questions that people ask me is, how do I get past my own blocks? And, the answer is focus on the joy, focus on the good things. And each time you do that, it gets easier and easier and easier. And before long, you're past the block, and the world is filled with color and joy again. So thank you, Sue. Okay, I would have time for one more question now if anybody else has a hand up. If not, nope. Okay, then I will proceed. If we can go on with the next slide. The next slide talks about the importance of meditation. And I know I just heard a bunch of groans, okay? Unless you've been involved with yoga, which this wonderful person sitting on the beach is, obviously, or unless you've studied with a guru in India or somebody trained in India but in this country, you probably look at meditation as, oh, that stuff. The thing is, meditation is so much more than that. Let's look at the next slide. How to meditate. Believe it or not, the slide all the way on the right, well, that's a young woman doing something called Tai Chi Chuan. But anyone who's involved in any form of martial arts or any sport which demands tremendous balance and concentration, and that's most sports. That could be anything from tennis to golf. If you are involved in something that you put your complete and total attention on that's physical while you're doing it, guess what? It becomes a form of meditation. Why? It clears your mind and gives you single focus. Walking. If when you walk, there are two ways of meditating, incidentally, that are interesting. In most meditation, we shut the world out and we focus only on one single focused thought, like in Tai Chi or tennis. Or while we're walking, we're simply thinking about the walking. Okay, our mind is empty of everything else. We're not thinking about our mother or our son or our brother or our issue at work. Our mind is empty and we're thinking about walking. So usually we associate meditation with the mind being in the moment, blocking out all other thought, thinking of nothing except what it is actually involved with. However, there is another form of meditation. It's a little more difficult, I think, to achieve, and yet for some people it comes very, very naturally. And those people who are involved in that meditation do the exact opposite. They sit and they open to everything, but no one thing above any other. Isn't that interesting? So that would be, for example, me sitting and listening to the crickets and the birds and the wind and feeling the dew on my body and the hardness of the surface I'm sitting on, and smelling the flowers and being aware of all of these things at the same time and being totally immersed in them. That's another form of meditation. We see here a woman below the Tai Chi expert. We see a woman who's drumming. I do not recommend listening to any form of music that's going to involve you in it, but listening to something like a steady drum beat or chimes or Tibetan bells or a repetitive sound that just goes on and on and on so that it's just very droning or very unimportant for your mind to focus in on. That becomes a nice backdrop for meditating. If you've picked up my book and looked at it at all, you'll see that I always say when you're meditating, it's important for you to turn off the phone, put out the dog, meditate when the kids are at school, find a place in the house that other people don't frequent, that is something which is just your place, because the less stress, tension, the less of an environmental invasion that you have to deal with when you're learning to meditate, the more success you will have with meditation.